Hello world, this is Stefan of Lendrigan Games, and there is no home stretch in game development. We finally have something that can be played. The Google Drive and game site links are in the description. This feature leap took a while, partially because of what was added and partially because of what needed to be added. Getting this far showed me how many moving parts are actually involved in the base gameplay loop that I envisioned. Fortunately, everything started coming together when the related pieces were added, but until then, Roger Debris was not unreasonably worried by how much everything was not fitting together. The current state is nonetheless quite basic, of course, and it's still missing even a character selection screen. On a side note, one particular beginner's headache I'm glad to no longer be a hang-up for me is the finite state machine. Back when I was working on this game by myself, I came across the phrase while researching game building and found myself utterly frustrated by what I could find. The videos were all, here's why you need a finite state machine, and here's what you can do with a finite state machine. And much like what led to my creating a click-to-move tutorial, I found no answer from my question, what's some state machine code that I can copy and adapt? I did come across a template, but when I tried to implement it, the only feedback I got was, you're doing it wrong. Now that I think of it, it's rather parallel to my queries into what acts of love are, with others waxing about their virtues, and my only feedback when I tried was, you're doing it wrong. Fortunately for me, Roger knows what finite state machines are and how to implement them, and I could just tweak his work instead of having to perfect some of my own. With any luck, he also knows how to perform acts of love. Okay, I'm just being facetious. I long ago lost all interest in love. There is a piece of feedback that still sticks with me, though, and that's the suggestion to put myself out there. At the time that I received that piece of stiflingly conventional wisdom, I was near the end of my junior year at a boarding school, due to rise next year to senior. I had made a friend during freshman year, but like half of that freshman class, he didn't come back the following year. By that time, everyone else in my class had developed their own circles, leaving me outside of all of them. Exacerbating my social dilemma further was the social structure itself of boarding schools. Caste systems completely aside, and this school fortunately didn't have that problem quite so badly, students tend to associate most closely with fellow classmates, since already spending class time together breeds a comforting familiarity of sorts. That means that developing a close friendship with someone outside of my class could have resulted only with sheer luck. And looking back, that one friend was already the entire allotment. Nevertheless, I spent my sophomore and junior years in hearing my classmates regale each other with stories about the great times they've had together. Maybe that unsolicited put yourself out there advice was true and I should have injected myself where obviously wasn't needed, but because I was so unnecessary to everyone else at the boarding school, I would have much more benefited from learning what I could have done to stop being ignored, or learning why not being invited by my classmates to any fun ever was directly my fault. Senior year wasn't any better, but when I was struggling to survive in the real world, I was enjoying a couple unexpectedly large and grateful social circles while having ignored that advice. During that time, I lived alone. I worked a back-end job, spending most of my time away from everyone else. For me, however, being alone is comfortable and not nearly as lonely as being surrounded by people on whom I have no effect. Also, having to pay my way through life afforded me the freedom of having a nightlife. Having spent the daylight hours alone, I had large resources of energy for being near people and performing drunken karaoke. Yes, I also find it ironic that I'm both a loner and a ham. However, much like my being both a megalomaniac and live and let live, I've stopped wondering why I'm that way and instead now try to figure out what to do with my brain chemistry. That said, I do enjoy singing in front of strangers, so much so that I don't get stage fright. One would ask why I didn't use my performance skill to put myself out there, as had been suggested, and the answer is simply that the boarding school of 60 students had already chosen its Broadway star, leaving no room for me. Back to my later life, interacting with people only occasionally has proven to be a pleasant lifestyle for me. As much as man is a social animal, as Socrates said, that truth is cold comfort for those who had mostly unpleasant experiences with people they've known. Of course, one of the more amusing twists is that those who scold me for failing to be adequately upbeat are the same people who leave the worst taste in my mouth. Ever since I graduated college, my most frequent socializations have been online and with other misanthropes and shut-ins. Sociability is a lot less stressful when I'm allowed to not be social. On that note, though, because of my near complete asocial tendencies, not needing to be social means that I'm regularly not. Transitively, it's not uncommon for me to find myself on the sidelines of group conversations when the discussion is outside of my realm of interests, leaving me with nothing to add nor reason to care. Even one-on-one conversations aren't guaranteed to last, yet those at least often reach an organic end to a topic to give me a reason to stop talking. Ultimately, I'm a social outlier. I'm not an outcast, mind you, but instead a free agent bouncing from place to place in search of a destination. I've somewhat recently come to learn that I can't find a final resting place because I was never meant to find that. I'm supposed to create one and carve out a small piece of the world for it in the process. Now that you've heard my manifesto, come help me steal land to start a new sovereign nation.